What's going on, everybody? Brett here, and I'm back with my YouTube channel, Good Talk Gaming. And I've got an exciting one for you today, and it's exciting to me especially because this is an all-subscriber battle. So, of course, if you've been watching my channel for a long time, you've watched Triari play. He's a buddy of mine, and he sends me lots of really good replays, especially replays that are good for learning. His opponent today is going to be Snowlinks, playing as the Tomb Kings, the followers of Nagash, a unique sub-faction that they have access to, with unique units as well. So interesting choice. And Snowlinks, it's my understanding that you may have subscribed. So if that's the case, buddy, I appreciate it. And thanks for being a good sport and letting Triari send me these replays. So right off the bat, the one thing I notice about Triari's build is that he is going very focused on ranged. So of course he's got the two Eagle Claw bolt throwers, very good at sniping out large targets. Very good at hitting cavalry, and then in a pinch they can trade skirmish-wise with Ushabti great bows. So a nice pick there, and I like having two of them, and I also like spreading them out so that they won't suffer from any type of AoE spell casting. But in the center here, I think this is kind of the crux of the build, and maybe we could save that for last. So the front line is basic spearmen. Basic high-elf spearmen are very cost-effective in this matchup. They will beat Tomb King infantry, especially the low-tier skeleton spearmen, and they'll also have a dual role at helping to surround and bring down large targets, and they hold the line quite well with pretty decent leadership. In the back line, out on the flanks, you have the Lothern Sea Guard with shields, very cool unit as well, very kind of like a Swiss Army knife unit, right? They can shoot, they have a little bit less range than your standard archers, but that comes at the cost of them also having access to anti-large and charge defense against large. So I like putting them out on the flanks, using them as a bit of a deterrent for any type of units that may seek to come into the flanks and break down his strategy here. So, and also some white lines of trace in the front line. One of my favorite units on the high elf rosters. They're very good all-around unit. They have missile resistance, they have armor piercing, they have decent armor, decent stats. Their biggest weakness comes when they get their HP dropped below 50% and their combat effectiveness drops drastically thanks to that martial prowess. So in the center here, this is the main thing about this build that we need to focus on. Two very cheap archers, standard 180 range, but we also have the Sisters of Avalorn. These units are absolute beasts from range. They have fire and magic damage, which is very relevant versus the Tomb Kings. The Everqueen's Court Guard as well, who have their own set of buffs. The Banner of Avalorn, so an improved power recharge rate. Very good if you keep them near Teclis. So he's going to benefit from that. But the Sisters of Avalorn, the archers, even the Eagle Claw bolt throwers, if they were brought in a bit tighter, the Lothern Sea Guard brought in a bit tighter, would all benefit from the buffs being generated by the Handmaiden of the Everqueen. Also one of my secret favorite units in this roster. She's going to be coming fully equipped with the Horn of Isha, so plus 5 reload skill, plus 5 melee attack, the Enchanted Spyglass, plus 10% missile damage, Quicksilver Shot, plus 10 reload skill, and these three abilities by themselves are going to add a lot of DPS to all of these range units if they're kept close enough to her. So these archers are kind of running outside of her range, and I think they're just looking to, skirmish down these dire wolves before they can get to the back lines and perhaps take out this Eagle Claw bolt thrower. The Lothern Sea Guard plus Ultra Fire should be enough to dissuade them from trying to do that. You've also got Teclis here, who works very well with that type of build. The Tomb King Scorpion here, the Tomb Scorpion, has been taking that anti-large Eagle Claw bolt thrower fire and is going to retreat, and a very kind of veteran play here to retreat and then put him behind a rock and just hide him away from that range damage. They do have a range of 380, so as far as artillery goes, not the best range, but certainly enough to bring a Tomb Scorpion down before it engages in your front lines between the two of these. So in terms of Teclis working well with this type of build, he comes fully equipped with some very powerful Tomb Kings killing spells here. So let's get into that. He's got Kindle Flame, which applies a fire weakness every time he casts a spell. He has Wild Heart, which every time he casts a spell gives him increased power reserves and increased power recharge rate. so more spells. Shield of Safri, every time he casts a spell, plus 11% damage resistance to his entire army, a very good ability as well. He of course has Greater Arcane Conduit, which is an even better version of Arcane Conduit. Net of Amnitok. So there's two things in this build that work really well in conjunction with his archer play, and that is Net of Amnitok, which pins down a target so that he can focus fire them with his archers, which I'm sure we'll see him make good use of that this battle, as well as the Flaming Sword of Ruin, which doesn't just work. It says Flaming Sword, right? So you think it's a buff that you apply to your frontline troops, but it's not. If you overcast this in a grouped up bunch of archers, right, you're going to also increase their missile damage by 25%. So on the Sisters of Avalon, that's quite a big buff. Their missile damage is already up to 30 here, and these guys are up to 41. Oh, the Everqueen's Court Guard are so brutal to fight against. The Potion of Troy, going to be giving damage resistance plus healing if Teclis gets himself out of position, finds himself getting hurt. Now you can pop this, and this allows him to tank. And then the Bound Fiery Convocation. He gets two uses of this, and that's going to be a pretty brutal spell as well, because the Tomb Kings, with their kind of low HP, high model count front lines, usually you can roast them pretty well with that. It does fire damage as well as magical damage. So any units that regen suffer from that, getting healed. Any units that have physical resistance also will take, kind of piercing in a way damage from the magical aspect as well. Also very good against skeleton archers. A lot of times players will forget about their archers, leaving them in a nice neat row, and they'll just get wrecked by a single fiery convocation from Teclis or a firecaster. So let's go over the Tomb King's army, because it's pretty interesting here. Not a lot of people will play the Followers of Nagash. Instead, they'll opt to just play the straight Tomb King faction, which gives you a bit of a mystery around what kind of lore choice you'll take. It doesn't let your enemy anticipate you very well, but kind of a juke here. When I see Followers of Nagash, I instantly think Ark in the Black, and I instantly think, the Lore of Death, his skeleton summons that he can do, the ward save that he can apply on the ground. But going much cheaper here, and with a more of a combat lord, is going to be just a standard Tomb King on a chariot. So he's got this big shield, but he has no missile resistance from that. Natural 15% missile resistance, but this unit can be focused down quite heavily by the firepower on the other side of the battlefield. He's taking quite a few of his abilities. The Curse, if he drops below 50% HP, he will drain targets around him. My Will Be Done, a bit of a buff and an AoE around himself. As long as he stays above 50% HP, he'll get 22% damage resistance, which is quite nice. Reanimate for leadership, which keeps a lot of your skeleton boys in the fight. Tomb Strike here, melee attack, weapon damage, can cause terror. Very good if you find yourself in a duelist situation. Not so good from chariot back, would be better on horse or on foot. And then the Amulet of Fasta. So it sounds like he's saying Fasta. But it lowers armor and missile parry with shields and an AoE. So you can drop that on a high elf front line and then use your archers to do tons and tons of work there. So the Tomb Scorpion is coming out from behind his rock. The Direwolves are trying to find a way in. So the thing that's unique about the Followers of Nagash is they have access to some of the Vampire Council units. Direwolves being one of them. The other major one being Crypt Ghouls. They also have access to Fellbats as well, which are arguably more cost effective perhaps than Carrion in certain scenarios. The Crypt Ghouls are a nice augmentation to a cheap front line of Spearmen, because they do apply poison, and they do quite a bit more damage than, let's say, a Skeleton Swordsman unit. So, front line pretty much entirely of Skeleton Spears. I'm counting 4 at the moment. We have 3 of the standard Skeleton Archers, who can trade very cost effectively with High Elf Archers. They just need to get in range and start using that overwhelming volume of fire. They're a good bit cheaper than, let's say, the Sisters of Avalon, the Everqueen's Court Guard. So if you can focus fire with them, let's say it's an even trade, you still come out ahead, because ultimately your units cost less gold than your opponents. So I can go ahead and put it in standard speed now. We have 2 units of Ushabti Great Bows with their great kind of shield bursting, armor piercing. They almost like, their arrows are so large, it's like they're shooting ballista bolts. They're pretty crazy. And just 1 unit of Ushabti here, I like that choice as well. Could be very good at, let's say Triari had gone with a Lore Master or Swordmasters of Hoeth style build with lots of heavy armor piercing, very powerful infantry. The Ushabti mixed in with just some spearmen would be able to do quite a bit of work against that. We have one Necrotect here with only one ability, going to be looking to use his Restore, and that Restore allows him to heal the hit points of constructs. So the Tomb Scorpion, the Ushabti, is going to be able to do that quite nicely. And then last but not least is going to be the Lich Priest with the Lore of Nankara. So several abilities on him. He's got the ability to recharge his Winds of Magic, but also a lot of the cheap spells. So some of the spells that increase physical resistance. Ooh, and I don't want to miss anything. That Tomb Scorpion is getting like lasered down, but this is pretty important to go over because the Lich Priest is going to play a pretty large role in this battle. So Restless Dead, every time he casts on his side of the battlefield, and it's a pretty nice thing to have because between Joff's incantation of Cursed Blades, which increases weapon damage and armor piercing damage, and Neru's incantation of Protection for that physical resistance I mentioned earlier, and cost-effective spells, and every time you cast them on their low cooldowns, you're going to get healing to your entire army. And then the others, Usef's incantation of Desiccation, Curse of Xar, and those two, you know, but Nefari's Scroll of Mighty Incantations is going to be using to keep his Winds of Magic high. So let's get into it, guys. Net of Amnatok. Saw that coming from a mile away. Don't tease the High Elves whenever Teclis is on the battlefield. You have to expect a net of Amnatok whenever you see Teclis. You need to, first thing you do if you're fighting the High Elves and you see Teclis on the other side of the battlefield, you look at his spells, because that'll tell you where your opponent's mindset is and what they intend to do this battle. So unfortunately the Tomb Scorpion here, he's free, but it's a little too late. The Necrotech needed to move forward a bit faster to perhaps apply that Restore. The Lich Priest could have applied Neru's Incantation, 44% physical resistance, but you know, the Sisters of Avalorn, they do magic missile damage, and they're able to bypass that physical resistance quite nicely. So now the Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers are training their attacks onto the Ushabti Greatbows, while the Ushabti Greatbows rain that heavy ballista fire down onto the poor White Lions, who have decent missile resistance, but I'm not sure it helps much when every time they get hit, essentially just a model dies. So not a bad target. They're the most expensive infantry unit on the battlefield, but I would probably be shooting my Ushabti at the Everqueen's Court Guard here. Take them out as fast as you can. I think they're something like 1,600 gold. They're extremely expensive. And that'll allow your skeleton archers to move into firing range without fear and start skirmishing down all the other elements, the ranged elements on the battlefield. So what I'm seeing here is basically a disjointed attack from the Tomb King player, who recognized that they needed to be the aggressor here thanks to the artillery range of Triari's High Elves. So good observation there, but what I'm seeing I think is perhaps a bit of inexperience in microing in Total War Warhammer 2. So I see here these Skeleton Spearmen have not engaged. It's just a matter, honestly, of learning hotkeys. It takes a while to do, trust me guys. My first maybe 500 hours in Total Warhammer 2, I was still playing like it was Rome 2. And once I really knuckled down and learned all of the different hotkeys that there are to learn about attacking all of your units at once, putting them in hot groups so that they move efficiently across the battlefield, really taking account of sometimes what is my poor micro and accepting that, but then using these different shortcuts to make it easier on myself, I was able to really improve as a multiplayer player. So what I'm seeing here is this front line, which is much wider than the High Elf front line. Essentially just needed to go up and around, but I see these crypt ghouls here have been somewhat forgotten about. The Tomb King ran in, got Net of Amnatok, and is getting gunned down completely. Oh, that was brutal. So, you know, right idea, use your chariot to break into the back line. Perhaps trying to get into the Sisters of Avalorn, use the Amulet of Fasta to lower their armor so that he could run over them. But that Net of Amnatok, ultimately, I think Snow Lynx, you just weren't expecting it. And that's pretty brutal to play against when you're not expecting it. But the Crypt Ghouls are pretty good flanking units. They're pretty fast compared to Skeletons. They really had a chance to get in and do some serious damage, but Triari's staying high and tight in his pocket, these Ushabti here were a little bit sloppy in getting them through this gap. And it was, very good that he was able to see this gap and to get in here, but they stood still for just a bit too long. And by the time the Ushabti get in, they're already crumbling, and they're not going to be able to have that kind of impact that they would have had they got into, this engagement at 75, 80% health. Now the archers are in a position where they're being forced to run because in some crazy way the spearmen here have become the flankers, and they're going to be tying down these units. Fiery Convocation earlier on them didn't do a ton of damage, but one spearman from each flank getting in the back. The Summoned Ushabti being triggered from the level 3 Realm of Souls, and they're going to be getting into the archers and shutting them down. Much better target here is the Sisters of Avalorn, but they're not pushovers in combat. They're not just going to easily die. In melee combat, they can hold their own quite nicely. You'll see here infantry mode being engaged. The Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower's alternate mode of fire, they can switch to an anti-infantry widespread, which is excellent at killing skeleton archers. And they were already able to take apart one of the Ushabti great bows. So there's only one left on the battlefield, and its ammo is quickly running out. They're shooting at just kind of all the wrong targets. They're trying to help peel these spearmen off the archers, but I think it's just too little too late. The Lich Priest has been spellcasting this whole time, trying to make sure that certain units were buffed with that physical resistance, also applying that healing across the battlefield, but it's just not going to be enough. The Necrotech was committed a bit too late. I'm not even sure he was able to use any of his restores, and that's a lot of value lost. Very good army composition, I think. Well, I think very good is a bit of a stretch, but it was definitely a decent army composition from the Tomb Kings player, who I think is probably pretty new. So in terms of being, harsh on his build, I'm not going to be harsh on it at all, because it was a very well-rounded build. He had 3 forms of leadership, which I like: the Lich Priest, the Necrotech, and the Tomb King. They all had very different roles to play in this battle. He had Ushabti Great Bows for that long-range skirmishing and picking apart high-value targets. He also went wide with his front line. Spearmen, I probably would have gone with Swordsmen against the High Elves, the Dark Elves, or the Wood Elves, whose front line a lot of times will primarily be Spearmen, and you can take a bit of an advantage there. The odds of them kind of trying to charge over you and you needing that charge defense against large or that anti-large bonus is very rare. So for the same exact cost, I think Swordsmen might even be a bit cheaper, but I think they're the same cost. You can get the Swordsmen and trade just a bit better against the High Elf Spearmen. I like the idea behind the Crypt Ghouls. You either use them to flank because of their increased speed, and then to tie down units because of their poison, or you mix them in and amongst the front line to spread that poison debuff and to help you win the front line. The Skeleton Archers just needed, honestly, to be on better targets. These Everqueen's Court Guard and the Sisters of Avalorn were great targets for them to be attacking, and the Direwolves, unfortunately, were never able to find a home. The Ushabti got machine gunned down, so did the Tomb Scorpion. So honestly, Snowlinks, I think your build was solid. I think your instincts were really on point, honestly. You tried to flank with the Direwolves. You tried to, use your Tomb Scorpion as kind of a distraction. Also, when it took too much fire, you brought it back behind a rock. To me, that was a pretty veteran move. You identified the most expensive infantry unit in the White Lines of Trace, and you gunned them down pretty efficiently, so not a bad idea. Just more experience, I think, and learning the hotkeys will make you into a very good player. So thank you so much, man. I'm happy you considered subscribing to the channel, and thanks again to Triari for sending me this replay. Very good play from him as well as usual. He loves his High Elves, and he has lots of different variations on the build. So, I'm a guy who likes to play every single race and to try and get better at each race and to understand all the different matchups. But I think where that ends up hurting me sometimes is that I don't ever really specialize in any race. So I'm limited by how good I could potentially get in multiplayer. I think I would have to play, the same race over and over and over again for a long time to feel like I was in the top tier of players in that particular race. But Triari is definitely a top tier High Elf player, so no worries in losing to a top tier player of a particular race. So thank you guys so much for watching. Once again, my name is Brett. My channel is Good Talk Gaming. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you consider subscribing if you haven't already. I appreciate every single subscription that I get. I am a new YouTube channel, And I hope you guys consider sending me more replays. I have a few on deck from subscribers that I'm excited to get to. And I'm going to be actually, as soon as I'm done recording, I'm going to go play some. I'm trying to get done a cool siege battle for you guys. Sieges are something that needs some work in Total War Warhammer 1 and 2, and probably going to be in 3 as well. But they're still fun. They're still fun to play, and with the right buddies playing with you, you can still have a good time. So thanks, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.